morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's edition of ACEA's Truck Talks. My name is Thomas Fabian. I'm Chief Commercial Vehicles Officer at ACEA, and I'll be your host and moderator for the next 60 minutes here. This is the third edition of our Truck Talks series, and we are delighted that so many of you could join us today and for this discussion this morning on charging the fleet, the role of depot charging in heavy-duty vehicle electrification. As many of you know, ACEA Truck Talks is our dedicated webinar series on the transformation of road freight transport. Today, we will dive into one of the most crucial enablers for zero-emission trucks, that is depot charging. Why depot charging? Because for many operators, transport operators, whether regional distribution, logistics hubs, or municipal fleets, charging at the depot will be the backbone of their decarbonization and electrification journey. But it comes with both opportunities and challenges, from technical requirements and operational planning to investment needs and policy frameworks. Our goal today for this webinar is to unpack some of these aspects and highlight solutions that can help accelerate the rollout of depot charging across Europe. We're therefore very pleased to have two excellent speakers with us today. That is, on the one hand, it's Torben Dandorf, Head of Growth at Shell Recharge Solutions. He brings deep expertise from the energy and infrastructure side. And Jörg Friedrichs, who is Team Lead Charging and Facility Decarbonization at DHL. And Jörg has hands-on experience from implementing charging infrastructure projects for one of Europe's largest fleets here. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping points. This webinar will run until 11 o'clock. Each speaker will have around 5 to 7 minutes or so for their input, followed by a discussion. Please do feel free to share your questions, as usual, in the Slido. Throughout this session, we'll collect these questions and then address them as many of them as possible in the Q&A towards the end of this discussion. The session will also be recorded, and the recording will then be made available afterwards. With that, let me thank you again for joining today and hand over to our first speaker, Jörg. Floor's yours.
Good morning. Thomas, many thanks for the introduction. Just some words to me. So I'm working for DHL since more than 20 years, and I started, let's say, the electrification journey roughly 10 years ago in context with street scooter. And there we have implemented till now roughly 44,000 charging points, AC charging points. And since 4.5 years, our department is quite happy to support other business units by implementing charging infrastructure. And in the meantime, we also, let's say, have deep dives into a holistic overview how to manage our facilities in relation to the electricity. I will come to this a little bit later. Yeah, please go ahead with the slides. So yeah, here we can see, let's say, the current status of our CO2 emissions. So in 2024, we had roughly 34 million tons of CO2 emissions. And to be honest, it is dominated by air transport. So more than 2/3 of our emissions are emitted by airplanes. And here we are looking into SAF solutions, so sustainable air fuel. And here we are on a good way. But then the second, let's say, biggest decarbonization lever is line hauling, with roughly 16% of our CO2 emissions. Next page, please. One back, please. It's quite important to mention here that we have roughly 106,000 trucks running in our fleet all over the world, and 90% of them is subcontracted. So 10% is managed by ourselves, and there is quite easy, let's say, to start initiatives to electrify these trucks, but 90% is subcontracted, and to be honest, this is currently sometimes an issue to convince our service partner to invest in these trucks due to the fact that they are currently, at least currently, 2.5 times more expensive than diesel trucks. Pickup and delivery, so 6% of our CO2 emissions there, we are on a good way, let's say. 80% is scope 1, so easy to manage. And here our target is to electrify all our POD fleet, all of our POD fleet till 2030, by 66%, so 2/3. And currently we have already roughly 40% achieved. So we are related to our own fleet, and to be honest, we are on a good way, and we will achieve this goal. And yeah, once again, to electrify trucks, definitely more complicated. Next slide, please. Here you can see, let's say, a generic overview of a parcel center. We have 38 of them in Germany, and we have, let's say, in standard times, not peak times, roughly 80 trucks a day. And currently the electricity consumption for sure is dominated by the building, so solar, lighting, something like that, and it's roughly 650 kilowatt. So no, the grid connection we have there is enough for the facility, but not when we are implementing battery electric vehicles. So the standard grid connection at this facility is currently something around 1.5 megawatt, and we are in some cases, let's say, to enlarge this grid capacity to 2.5 megawatt. And this means that we can, let's say, manage to charge trucks, battery electric trucks, let's say in the first wave, but even in the second wave, so in 2030, we will have an issue. We will, let's say, overcome this threshold. And when we are thinking about, let's say, to electrify all of our trucks beyond 2035, in some cases we are quite happy and are able to enlarge our grid connection to 5 megawatt. And yeah, even then, if we are happy, we are not able to charge all of our trucks on our yards. And you can see here, due to the fact that our trucks are on our yards at 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, this additional peak, very high peak, is when during that time when also the electricity price is high. So that's two then definitely issues. So high peak cost and high electricity cost, kilowatt hour costs. Next page, please. Yeah, and therefore we are looking, let's say, in a holistic approach, how we can manage our facilities. And yeah, what I mentioned before, first of all, we look at our grid connection, grid expansion, and looking what is possible and what is, from a financial point of view, viable. Then we are thinking about charging infrastructure. So we have to implement the right chargers for the right use case. For delivery events, it's AC charging, and for the line haul, for sure, high power charging. And here we are also thinking about MCS. Come to this later in our discussion. Then for sure, battery storage and PV systems is quite important to think about, let's say, to combine each other to reduce this peak power and to enlarge the self-consumption when having a PV system. But to be honest, currently, especially battery storage systems are still quite expensive and not in every case is financial favorable. Yeah. Then power purchase agreement. We are looking into local, also into direct and indirect power purchase agreements, at better than, let's say, to buy certificates to have green electricity. And last but not least, we are looking in a very deep looking into an energy management system, so installed on site, so managing everything on site, but also, let's say, portfolio wide. We have to think and to combine all of our, how to combine all of our facilities into the system, and have maybe in future I think about to manage our own balance group as a partner. That's in a nutshell what we are doing currently, and I'm quite happy to hand over then to, first of all, maybe questions, Thomas?
Indeed, thank you very much, Jörg.
You're welcome.
And may I indeed ask two questions here? Perhaps could you go a little more into detail again on the point you made about load management? So how you're integrating smart charging load management into your depot planning, etc., to balance the costs and operations?
So we are implementing a so-called local controller. So it's a small PC, let's say, and he is connected directly to the grid connection. So that means we are measuring the current load, and then we know, okay, for example, we have 603 kilowatt capacity at your facility, and let's say 300 kilowatt of them is it's used for the building. You can use the other 330 kilowatt to charge your cars, trucks, vans, whatsoever. During the night, the building load is almost zero, not really zero. So you have some base loads, and then you can use 600 kilowatt to charge your vans and trucks. And this avoids, let's say, to enlarge and to invest into grid connections more than necessary. So once again, we have seen that it's quite interesting to think about how we can use the existing grid connection as best as possible.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. And perhaps just a follow-up question to this one: what is the when you showed the curves there with the expected on an average, indeed on an average depot, the peak curves, and 28, 2030 beyond. What is the timeline that you have that you experience when it comes to grid upgrades, and perhaps you have a figure? How much money are we talking?
So first of all, that is definitely a question of time. So if we are lucky, it takes currently something between 14 and 16 months to implement DC charging infrastructure, meaning also, let's say, enlarge the grid connections. But to be honest, in more than 20% of our project, it takes more than 3 years to get the grid connection, due to the fact that in that area we are located, the medium voltage situation is on a limit, let's say, the limit, and therefore the DNO has to invest into the grid connection, and then it takes 3 and more years to get more electricity on our yards. So once again, it depends. Average is 14, 16 months, but sometimes it takes more than 3 years. And to be honest, and it is quite cost intensive. So currently we are paying in Germany at least up to 200 euro per kilowatt as let's say construction fee, I would say. That's what the DNO is asking for providing the grid connection. And then for sure we have then the peak costs when we are using the charging infrastructure. It's also the average price in Germany is 150 euros per kilowatt. So that ends up in a very high euro value, to be honest. 100,000 of euros.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you so much. And
welcome.
Before we dive into the discussion, I'd be more than interested in any creative ideas you may have how to tackle this. But before we do this, Torben, the floor is yours, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Thomas, and pleasure to be here today. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Torben. I have 15 years of experience in the energy sector. I've worked with some of the leading truck OEMs in Europe on mobility and energy solutions. I'm now heading our growth department in Europe dedicated on truck electrification. That is including teams in the UK, in Benelux, and also all across Europe to really help us scale truck electrification throughout all of the various use cases. And we have been on a bit of a journey. 5 years roughly, we've explored AC charging, we've explored DC charging, we have provided solution designs to customers, and all of that because originally we have spoken to our customers. And when you think about Shell's customers, yes, for 99% of the last 50 years, these customers have asked us for diesel solutions. But more recently, they're also coming to us to ask us, how do we best decarbonize? What is the best decarbonization solution of choice? And we're looking into renewable diesel supply, into bio-LNG supply, also to some extent into hydrogen. But we have also concluded that particularly in depot, electrification is by far the most energy efficient solution. And therefore, we have set up this dedicated department. And over the last 5 years, we've learned a lot. We have learned what goes well, what doesn't go so well, particular challenges, but we have also come together with some solution proposals. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to start by just sharing 5 key takeaways from our journey. And if you look at the bottom of the slide, you see charging hardware. We've actually started with passenger car chargers, and we have tested them. And to be honest, we have learned that there can be issues with thermal management, with temperatures, with trucks charging using passenger car chargers that actually then go into derating, and customers actually not being able to get the particular charging time they wanted to out of a charger. So we've bought a German charge point manufacturer, the company called SBS GmbH, and we have brought their charging equipment, which is particularly focused on commercial vehicles, into our solution approach to overcome those dilemmas. On the right-hand side, you see support for maintenance and services. It's the second learning we've had on our journey, where we have learned that the chargers just need to work. In particular cases, 99% of the time, 365 days a year. And that is only possible when you have proper remote service monitoring solutions in place, but you also have dedicated staff on site that is available when something is not working well. We're also going in this direction of predictive maintenance to further increase service uptime. In the middle of the slide, our third learning, you see solution design engineering. And I don't think it's particularly difficult to install a single charger at the depot, but it becomes incredibly difficult, and Jörg has alluded to it already, when you go from 1 charger to 20 chargers and beyond. So what we have learned from SBS GmbH particularly, and our experience in the bus industry, where we have gone to install all the way up to 200 DC chargers, that it's super important to not only get the charging hardware right, but also to get the end-to-end solution design in place, from original concept all the way to the execution. And in some of the cases, we have gone as far as not electrifying a depot, but finding a new solution and a new location for a depot because of grid constraints, etc., where we basically said a new location to scale big is better placed. You also see this category of energy storage and power systems on the slide. And I think we'll talk a bit about grid constraints today. And certainly, we also feel that sometimes it's taking a bit, and it's a challenge. But there are also 2 particular learnings we have had. On the one hand, where you can start small and scale. I think DHL has come a long way with their electrification ambitions, but some companies are still just at the starting point. And I don't think you need to wait for this 5 MVA location to be available in 2029 to start electrifying, when you can start small and then scale big at a later point. And similarly to DHL, there's a lot you can do with a bit of a microgrid type of approach. You can bring solar on site. You can bring battery storage solutions on site. For customers like Contargo, we have gone as far as recuperating crane energy to overcome grid constraints. So a bit of a microgrid type of approach is also has also been one of our learnings to overcome challenges in the short term. And then if you combine all of this, the biggest challenge we have seen over the last years that in a lot of cases, the commercial model just simply hasn't worked out. So everyone has looked into this from a decarbonization point of view, and that's incredibly important. But we also learned that getting the economics right for all of the parties involved is essential to truly scale. And if we go to the next slide, we have sat down over the last month to basically address two issues. The issue of how can we increase charge point utilization to have a better return on the initial upfront investment, and how can we truly help partners and customers generate incremental revenue in order to address this TCO dilemma. And I think, Thomas, all of the truck CEOs last week when they met with the European Commission, there was a lot of conversation about TCO. So what we have basically done is we have redefined the depot in itself. So we do not any longer consider the depot a closed up asset. And you see this in the blue part on the right-hand side of the slide. We're opening up depots for subcontractor charging to allow the owner of the depot to sell the electricity to subcontractors. But we are also going in the direction of semi-public charging, where we convert depots into locations which are temporarily accessible to the public. And again, the depot asset owner can sell electricity to the public at particular points. So for the last year or so, these have been individual solutions. And what we have recently done, we've brought all of this together in an integrated network type of approach, where we combine depots, where we combine semi-public locations, where we also had our public charging locations. And we have kind of brought the payment interface to connect the dots between all of that. And it's helping us to address the issue of electricity cost, because we can truly optimize the electricity cost at the depot. But it's also helped us to speak to customers about revenue generation. And I think the key part, also addressing what some of the truck CEOs were sharing last week, I think for the first time, and Thomas, you can quote me on this after today's webinar, we believe that if we bring forward such a solution, the TCO of the battery electric truck can outperform the TCO of the diesel truck. Not in 2030, but actually right now, leveraging lowest electricity cost in an optimized manner, and this energy and revenue generation on site. Bringing this together can really push the needle on the commercial model. And yeah, super excited to be here. Jörg has already shared some of the key parts on the journey, and happy to start the discussion on this basis.
Thank you very much, Torben. Indeed, very interesting. I would like to reflect on one of the points that you made here about the commercial models, the business models, right? I mean, the beauty of decarbonizing heavy-duty road transport, we think, is that it is actually fairly simple. It boils down to a fairly simple question. Do we have the vehicles? Do we have the infrastructure and the energy that is needed? And does it make economic sense? Do they have the TCO cost parity or a cost advantage? Once all of these factors are in place, then it's a fairly simple decision. Yes, we need to go for this because it's commercially viable and beneficial to do that. However, this is obviously, as we all are learning, an extremely complex street fighting issue, because what you described, Torben, and I wanted to ask a question. This one is, it looks a bit like a clean sheet approach, right? So you have a clean sheet, and this is how you ideally should be able to design this. But if I understand you correctly, then Jörg is not in a position to open new depots within the next 3-4 years at the scale needed to decarbonize road transport. So everything is very, very tailored here, right? This is a very tailored individual solutions business. Or?
I think you have a great point, Thomas. And I don't think it makes sense to look at this as one size fits it all approach for all of Europe, for all of the countries, for all of the locations. And what I think what you're alluding to is integrated network type of thinking shouldn't be looked at holistically across the entire continent, but more in a particular dedicated location type of approach, where you may look at a DHL depot, where you may look at a particular partner depot, where you look at a public charging location. I don't know, take, for example, the area of Frankfurt, where in proximity of 100 kilometers, you can identify depots, a couple of public charging locations, and then truly connect the dots. Let's speak about long haul 1,000 kilometer type of solutions at a later point, but with the majority of the use cases being in the type of 300 kilometer range, a starting point of the journey, a depot, an end point of the journey, maybe a subcontractor depot or a partner depot partially open up to the public, and a public truck charging location in between brings this network thinking to a local area, and then can be adjusted to the particular use case and the demands, to your point of it's not one size fits it all.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Thank you. Can I add, and indeed, let's start the discussion unless there are any urgent questions in the chat box, which does not seem to be the case. One question to you, Torben, that I noted down is perhaps taking a step back again. What is, and then the same question to you, Jörg, as well. What is the role of depot charging actually in the grand scheme of things here? So if you compare this to, we often had in the discussion here in Brussels, when we talked about the ACEA, the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation, yeah, the ACEA targets don't need to be that high because most of the charging will happen anyway in depots. So what's the big picture here? What's the role of depot charging compared to public corridor charging, for example? Torben.
Yeah, I'm happy to start sharing my views. To be honest, I think it's an undervalued asset in the entire equation. There's a lot of conversation about public charging to it, and it's incredibly important, don't get me wrong. But bringing the depot into the heart of the conversation will add a lot of value. And I've shared this before. I think our conversations with customers have shown that 70% of all trips and all use cases in itself are within a 300 kilometer range. And I think maybe what has been missing and why the depot hasn't gotten so much publicity is that as a society, we have looked at it as a closed up location. While there's so much more potential to it if you add the subcontractor to it, or if you go into the category of semi-public, where you leverage the asset for maximum utilization. And then I think depot charging is incredibly important. Let's ask Jörg, how many of his trucks are spending the night at a depot, and where are the trucks starting the location? In most of our customer cases, the depot is the starting point of any journey.
Thank you. Jörg, here's your question.
Yeah, that's totally right, Tom. Yeah, so no, the depot charging is also for us quite important solution on our electrification journey. So no, what I tried to mention before is we started this and we let's say are currently implementing charging infrastructure, but to be honest, we also need truck charging parks quite close to our facilities, due to the fact that either we have no capacity currently, and it takes 3, 4, 5 years to get them, then it's then hard to fulfill our targets. And if we, let's say, will have electrified all of our trucks, then it's also clear that we are not able to do this on our premises. So it's once again a grid connection issue, but don't forget also, let's say, space limitations on our sides. Our depots and parcel centers, terminals, whatsoever, were not designed to park trucks for a couple of hours. So no, they come on our yards, park the trailer or the swap body, and then they leave the yard. And therefore, we definitely need also public truck charging parks. And this is the reason why we are also in contact with Shell. We had a conversation beginning of this week regarding that, and how truck charging park providers like Shell can support us by implementing battery electric vehicles in our operations.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Jörg. And then as a follow-up, you mentioned earlier that if I recall correctly, you said that 90% of your fleet of your services are actually subcontracted.
Correct.
Yes, they do. I assume they also do obviously operate to your depots, obviously, but they probably have also their own depots or parking sites or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you address them and their issues? Because if you want to, you said you need to convince them to invest in zero emission, and that is not an easy undertaking.
Correct. No, first of all, we will allow them to charge their trucks on our premises for sure, and then also for a quite competitive price, to be honest. Now, due to the fact that the energy price is quite important for the entire cost we have to pay also to our service partners. Therefore, it's quite clear that we say, okay, you can charge at a very low cost on our premises, and then the, let's say, additional surplus price, let's say, we have to pay currently for transport is then lower than when the service partner is charging outside our facilities. And we are also thinking about, let's say, to implement semi-truck charging parks. So maybe if the location is possible to do that, so meaning the chargers are not within the fence, but outside of the fence, but still on our yards, then it's also possible to say, okay, not only our service partners can charge on our sites, but also dedicated partner. Not everyone, to be honest, but dedicated partners. It's also, let's say, the discussion we started already. Yeah.
But thank you. But there's also Torben, I believe. I mean, I heard this before from different angles, that because Jörg, you just said your partners would be invited to part at this, not everyone.
Yeah.
There are solutions for this everyone technically as well, no?
I think there are. I'll come to that in just a second. But just to build on one other thing Jörg has been saying, I think this energy cost and electricity cost optimization at the depot is business essential. And Jörg has alluded to what they've done, addressing peak shavings, the energy management system in that itself. And I think there's a lot of conversation, particularly in Germany, about the difficulties and challenges about electricity cost. But in order to make the electrification work, I think smarter solutions, how to go about the electricity cost optimization are possible. And we just encourage everyone to just think in the direction of moving from fixed to flexible energy tariffs, to avoid some of the peak cost hours, to adjust the charging in a particular way that you can leverage low cost hours with the demand flexibility over the night. And just to share one data point about this, we believe that if you do this right, you can lower your electricity cost by up to 30% in the depot. And that will really help with the business case. The other element, and Thomas, you were just asking about it, is indeed opening up locations to the public where you go beyond the subcontractor. I think the subcontractor is a super essential element. It's partner companies you know very well, but if the location is right, in front of the fence, it is possible to set up a type of location where you have part of the charging behind the fence for your own company, but then also part of the charging in front of the fence where you operate a public type of environment, maybe just for dedicated hours of the day, and you digitally manage that, or you manage it with book and charge type of solutions. But there you can almost add new public charging locations to this entire integrated network. And it's not only about building an entire location from scratch or electrifying an existing truck port, but bringing the depot to that next level and making it an additional asset in the entire equation.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is, I mean, the way you're describing this, and you mentioned this earlier, is there's no one size fits all solution here. I mean, this is a business opportunity, obviously, and it's solutions need to be found, but it's also a lengthy process, right? Can be longer and shorter. But that, Jörg, you also mentioned earlier the timelines of actually getting the chargers installed and potentially the grids upgraded. On that, a follow-up question to you, Jörg. How has, in view of the challenges, and you said you started 10 plus years ago with this electrification journey, how have the challenges that you have encountered affected your vehicle procurement timelines and strategies? And perhaps related to that, what triggered the question here is, you said our targets, right? These targets are that you have, decarbonization targets. Can you elaborate a bit on this as well, please?
So, first of all, we start always, let's say, with the facility. So, it's quite clear that we need charging infrastructure before the vans, trucks arrive. Therefore, first of all, our colleagues are looking into the current situation and started then the conversation with the DNOs. And then what I mentioned before, if you are lucky, 14, also they say, yeah, everything is okay. You can have, let's say, additional 1.5 megawatt, and then we can start, let's say, with the installation process of the charging infrastructure. In other cases, so if they say no, there's no additional grid connection available, yeah, then we have to postpone it. Therefore, currently we start with the facility, with the location, makes them fit for the electrification, and then the vans or trucks will arrive. And the second question was more or less related to our targets. So now, let's say, now we have a clear target till 2030 regarding our heavy duty fleet. So I mean, 30% of our trucks should be either electrified or, to be honest, this is most very important to say, then use renewable energies. Or let's say something like HVO. To be honest, currently I'm not able to say, okay, well, what is the part also on electric trucks? The only thing I can say is that we are currently implementing or start to implement charging infrastructure for roughly 100 trucks within the next 1.5, 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And is this, as a follow-up question to this, and then also to Torben, I mean, in the grand scheme, again, we're talking public infrastructure, especially line haul, relevant for your type of or part of your business, and we're talking semi-public and private depot charging infrastructure. Now, we're beginning to see that the different member states are at different speeds when it comes to the implementation of the ACEA targets. okay, we're still at the beginning of this process to an extent, but still there's an unevenness in the rollout. How do you, Jörg, sequence, you alluded to this already, sequence the build out of depots, vehicle deployment, and manage this with the regulatory and the grid risks in ACEA implementation? What is the sequencing of this?
Yeah, so once again, so
it starts with the facility.
With the depot, with the facility, and what also Torben mentioned before, we are looking for, let's say, line haul distances max up to 400 kilometers between the depots. Therefore, it's currently not that important to have these charging parks in between these facilities, but once again, it's quite important to have these charging parks close to our facilities, to our terminals. They are also, in the majority of cases, located close to the TEN network, and therefore, yeah, it's both solutions we definitely need: depot charging and also public charging, truck charging parks. So once again, it starts with the facility, looking for distances between our facilities up to 400 kilometers, and then, yeah, we can implement battery electric vehicles into our fleet.
Yeah, take it from there, understand. And to you, Torben, is this, I mean, also ACEA implementation, and you do play a role in public charging, obviously, as well. But also, do you have any insights, experience into what are the regional differences across Europe here? And other challenges that you are facing that are different in different regions?
Yeah, and indeed, I think, Thomas, different member states are at a different point in time when it comes to implementation and also government and regulatory support. So, for example, what we're seeing is in the Netherlands, there's a clear acceleration of this medium duty element at the moment. Take the UK, for example. Bus, local, commercial solutions are truly scaling. But when it comes to the heavy applications, the UK is kind of lagging behind. And in Germany, I think a lot of people are just waiting for regulatory clarity. What is happening this year? What is happening next year? What is happening over a period of the next 10 years? A lot of customers we're talking to give us that feedback and are basically saying, we want to electrify, but we just do want regulatory clarity of what is happening over the period of the next 10 years.
Yeah. And stability.
Yeah. The other point I think is just quite critical. There's this public charging element and how to get it right. But if we look at the vehicle registration numbers, and Thomas, you know them a bit better than I do. But if I'm not mistaken, we're below 5% when it comes to heavy commercial vehicle electric trucks in the new vehicle registrations. Well, you can debate about it, whether it's 70% of depot use case, 60%, or even more. But it's just 5% new electric trucks on the road. So there is a key element missing, and I think it's truly coming down to that TCO question. And I will wholeheartedly basically challenge all of us to say, let's work out this TCO element with energy optimization, but also with revenue sharing in a new type of model and how we're thinking how to go about it. Because if we prove that diesel TCO can be beaten by battery electric TCO, that can maybe eventually and finally push the needle.
It's I understand this and fully support this, obviously. The numbers are a little more shocking even. It's less than 5%. So we're talking 3.5% of zero emission registrations in the first half of this year. And the issue is, from our perspective here, this is medium and heavy duty trucks. So if you only look at the heavy duty segment, above 15, 16 tons, we're only talking 1.5%. And why are we so focused on the heavy segment? because our regulation, and that's why I'm slightly triggered by this wait and see approach for regulatory clarity. Our perspective on this is our CO2 regulation is focused on CO2 reductions. So in order to bring the CO2 emissions down, we need to focus on the big levers. This is where we need to make it happen. And the segment where it needs to happen is heavy duty long haul, because this segment is about 5 times the size of the medium segment. So there's about the medium truck segment below 15 ton is about a quarter or a fifth of the heavy segment. And Jörg, you alluded to this in one of your slides, that with the 100,000 plus kilometers per year mileage, this is where the emissions come from. They do not primarily come from the 250, 350 kilometers range operations. They're an important element, but we need to move the lever in the heavy segment. And this is where the challenge is. And this is why we're so concerned that we need to go from 1.5% zero emission registrations early this year to about 35% in 4.5 years.
Yeah, and if I add an additional element to it, and thank you for sharing this, Thomas. What we've recently also done is we've implemented a corridor type of thinking approach, where you place the depot at the start of the journey. You have a public charging point along the way, and a subcontractor or a partner depot at the end point of the journey. And if you combine this, and Jörg was also saying 400 to 500 kilometer range, if you look at what the truck OEMs can deliver on a single charge nowadays, you can push the needle to go from 250 kilometer use cases, maybe all the way to 700 and 800 kilometer use cases, leveraging the depot on the one hand, but also leveraging public charging locations along the way. And I think the beauty of this semi-public type of thinking is this public charging point doesn't necessarily has to be a former diesel truck point or a new greenfield type of environment. It can very well be, and we are equipping our public charging locations where we see local demand and where that is possible. But if you add a semi-public element to the way, you can have a start point of the journey, an end point of the journey, a semi-public location, and you combine these in this integrated network type of thinking, and your total daily range goes far beyond the 300 kilometers we've originally been talking about.
Very interesting indeed. And I've also checked, we have a number of questions here that are that should be visible now to everyone. Perhaps coming back to an earlier question here, I think it was you, Torben, you also said what is holding people back at the moment. And you mentioned regulatory clarity. And I think, Jörg, you kind of nodded to this. There's a question from Susanne. What is the regulatory clarity that you're actually missing, for example, in Germany? What is it?
Jörg, do you want to start?
Yeah, so it's definitely a question of toll reduction. Currently, it's still under the discussion whether it will also, let's say, will be valid after 2025, so in 2026. And to be honest, without this toll reduction, it's we are not able to operate battery electric vehicles to a comparable price like a diesel. To be honest, even with this toll, it's currently a little bit more expensive, but without this toll reduction, it's definitely not possible. Additional, to be honest, the electricity price is quite important, and we know that let's say the level of price we have to fulfill that a battery electric truck can be operated comparable to a diesel truck, and with the current, especially grid costs. Once again, here in Germany, it's hard to fulfill that. So therefore, from our point of view, also it's quite important to, reduce this grid connection costs, especially also for our business. Yeah. to be honest. Otherwise, it will be hard to come to a higher percentage than 1.5% electric trucks, long-haul trucks.
Yeah. Torben?
Yeah, and if I quickly build on this, this is more of what we are picking up from the customer conversations we are having, because we are approaching the electrification from a point of view where we bring local demands together, demand from our customers, and then also the solution type of approach. And one of the other things we continue to hear that it's coming down to project financing. Jörg has alluded to it. And government subsidies also needing to include grid connections and energy storage solutions from a subsidy point of view. So it's really about extending that subsidy landscape to the end-to-end total cost in the equation.
And I'm also thinking about currently, let's say, the situation, if you have a facility with a PV system on it and the battery storage and you charge then external trucks, it's currently, to be honest, from a fiscal point of view, not that easy, to be honest. So no, we have a lot of discussions regarding that, whether we have to pay the electricity fee, VAT or not. So therefore, it's quite important also to us that the regulatory regarding how to sell electricity produced by a PV system and stored in a battery storage system. This battery storage system is also connected to the grid. To be honest, this is that complex that say, okay, forget it. No, we will do it as soon as this is clear. But currently, no chance to fulfill all these requirements. Correctly.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly not going to do a webinar on this question. But if you, I have a couple more questions here, and some of you alluded to this already. If you think about this in a, I mean, it's not yet Christmas, but if you could wish for something, right? You mentioned regulatory clarity, and then I understood it's more about the grid upgrades, for example, and pricing, charging pricing, etc. Perhaps permitting plays a role, I understand. But if you think of the question, and again, looking at this from a vehicle manufacturer's perspective, our deadline here, and it's a hard deadline as it feels now, is 2030. What changes in the regulatory framework do you, both of you, think would help accelerate depot charging in a meaningful, effective way before 2030? You want to start, Torben?
From a regulatory point of view, Thomas, I'm not in a position to share anything from regulatory aspects to change in regarding the depot in itself. I would come back to this concept of all of us combined, including the vehicle manufacturers, re-challenging total cost of ownership. And maybe also over the last years, some of the truck OEMs have done their particular approach. Solution providers like us have done their particular approach. But honestly, we are on this mission together. And if we do our very best at jointly collaborating, I think we can truly accelerate if we put total cost of ownership, beating diesel total cost of ownership, into the heart of the conversation we have with all of our customers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jörg.
Yeah, so once again, I come back to the energy costs, to be honest. So no, this is definitely an issue we have. With the current high costs, it's quite hard to operate a battery electric vehicle compatible to a diesel. Then, to be honest, let's say the toll reduction is a very big lever, and not only in Germany, and then all over Europe. So we are currently, let's say, implementing battery electric trucks just in that areas where the toll is reduced, to be honest. And last but not least, we also have some discussions regarding the greenhouse gas quota, let's say, management. So in Germany, you can make money with the THG quota. No, and in the Netherlands, as far as I know, with HPE, and this is definitely also an additional big lever to generate income and to reduce the TCO costs for trucks, for battery trucks.
Yeah. It's a great point, and let me just add one point here on the toll on the LKW Maut in Germany, and as a result of the Eurovignette implementation. I mean, this is what we see is indeed that the economic parameters, someone put it recently, in Germany for certain use cases, if you have a high mileage on the tolled motorway within Germany and you have a relatively long contract time, not a year or so, but rather 3 + 4, 5 years or something like this, then the economic parameters, TCO, begin to work out. That still doesn't mean we have the charging infrastructure, right? And it doesn't mean if you operate cross-border, not into a country where you do not have the tolling system, and it begins to change the equation as well. The problem to the regulatory changes here, the problem that we, from a vehicle manufacturer's perspective, see is that we have 2 countries that make fully exempt zero-emission vehicles from the CO2 from the Eurovignette. 2. We have 9 countries that partially exempt those vehicles, and the rest doesn't do anything yet. So I'm not sure if regulatory changes will help accelerate this, but we fully agree on the fact that the tolling system, CO2-based tollings, road charging rates are an important lever here. Now, we're closer or nearing the end of our discussion here. I would like to ask one additional question, though there's very many that will remain unanswered for the moment, obviously. But if you look beyond the regulation framework, and some of you, I think, Jörg, you already alluded to this to an extent, what else should be done? So what about de-risking financing? What about, I understand, combining, the different subsidy schemes, if they exist, look at vehicles independent from charging, independent from grids. Any ideas on this, Jörg?
Yeah, so no, to be honest, subsidy is still quite important, no, due to the fact that we have to invest quite a lot of money into our locations. Also, to be honest, a little bit more than we expected before, but it's okay. We can do it at the beginning. And if I have a wish, let's say it's also a little bit related to our customers, that they are also willing, let's say, to pay an additional fee, let's say, for green transport. And to be honest, this is also a discussion that's not that easy for our sales department currently.
Thank you. That may be the subject of a follow-up webinar. But Torben, you have an idea?
I think it's coming down to revenue generation, as in good old business case type of thinking. We need to identify someone who's going into the upfront investment. Can be companies like Shell, can be companies like DHL, can be customers in that sense. But whoever is investing needs to be put into a position to also deliver particular returns. And that can happen through selling electricity. You don't need to be the CPO. You don't need to have an electricity trading license. But there's software out there where you basically invest, but then at the end of the day also generate revenues, selling to your subs, selling to the public, etc. And the return and the amortization time on your upfront investment is significantly shortened, and then it becomes an attractive business model.
Thank you. Thank you, Torben. Thank you, Jörg. I'm afraid we're running out of time here, so let me thank you both for your valuable insights, for the great discussion, and thank you all of our listeners, the audience joining today, and for your questions here. I think that the discussion today made clear that depot charging will be a cornerstone of heavy-duty electrification, yes, but scaling it up requires coordinated action and presents everyone with significant questions here. So from the technical solutions and the operational know-how to supportive policy frameworks, we need all of the actors from manufacturers to operators to energy providers and policymakers to work together. And this is precisely what we aim to do our part here, at least, with this ACEA Truck Talk webinar series, to bring together the right voices, share experiences, and push forward the enabling conditions for Europe's truck decarbonization journey. We hope that you found today's session useful and inspiring. The recording will be shared and available with everyone on the website. And please keep an eye on our website for the upcoming Truck Talk sessions and other key aspects of this transition. On behalf of ACEA, and thank you again, Torben, Jörg, thank you for being with us this morning. We look forward to continuing this conversation with you. Bye-bye.